Beep-a-da-bop.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beaker Bros. I am Sonia, and today we are joined by two very special guests. For our first guest, she's actually going to be our guest host for today. Her name is Caitlyn. She's in her first year of health research methodology master's program here at McMaster, and she also did her undergrad in life sciences at McMaster as well. Welcome, Caitlyn. How's it going?
Thanks so much for the warm introduction. It's going good. I will now introduce our guest. So today we're joined by Megan Neufeld, a first-year student occupational therapist at McMaster University. She also completed her undergraduate degree in the Human Behaviors program with a specialization in autism and behavioral sciences here at Mac as well. Academics aside, she's my best friend, so she's on the podcast today. Very grateful to have her, and I'm grateful to be here as well.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Megan. How is your day going? What you been up to?
Oh, I was in placement all day today, so I'm pretty tired.
Well, you know what? We'll make this little interview nice, short, and sweet, and hopefully you have a good time out of it.
Sounds good.
Okay. We'll start off with the very first question. Actually, before we start off with the first question, if you can hear music in the background, my bad, I'm in Starbucks. But anyways, to start off with the first question. Megan, can you tell us a little bit about your undergrad education? What did you study and why?
So, like Caitlyn said, I did my undergrad in human behaviors with a specialization in autism and behavioral sciences. I originally started in the Life Science Gateway program, but then specialized in my second year. My program was super small. I think I was the third graduating year, which was really cool. There were only 15 of us, so I got super special treatment from all the profs, and you got that one-on-one with them, which was awesome. I feel like I went into this because I've always worked with individuals with intellectual disabilities. I wasn't completely sure what route I wanted to take. From life science, I knew it wasn't chemistry or biology or physics for sure.
Amen. Same.
So I started looking into different programs. I ended up going to a few psych information sessions, and that's where I discovered this program, and it just felt like a right fit to me.
Very cool. And was Mac then like the school that you were always looking at, or did you ever look at any other schools?
Mac was always the one that I wanted to go to. I knew I wanted to go into science. I just didn't know what sort of science. So obviously Mac was the right choice because it's such a science proficient school. And I honestly, it was never an option to go anywhere else for me. I needed to get into Mac. I wanted to go here so badly.
Did you ever consider any other programs when applying to undergrad? Aside from general science?
Aside from general science, like environmental science, or my initial first plan was to specialize into neuroscience out of the Life Science Gateway, which I later learned is very difficult to do. And all of the health science rejects that get into life science then want to apply to that because I think you come out of that program with the Bachelor of Health Science as well. So it wasn't in the books for me. And honestly, the way that it worked out in the program that I ended up in was probably a better match than that would have been anyways.
Interesting. Okay, you really preached Mac with that little description that you gave there. So very cool. Glad you ended up, from the sounds of it, it ended up being a solid program for you. The next question we want to ask is, so throughout your undergrad, were there any particular work experiences that you had that really kickstarted your interest in going into OT?
So, like I said, before even coming to Mac, I had been working with individuals with intellectual disability since I was 16 years old. I'll be honest, I didn't know what an OT was until I want to say my third year, because I did a placement in my third year, and that's when I was introduced to an OT. because they do work alongside behavior therapists pretty often, especially if you're looking at like ABA clinics, which is applied behavior analysis. That's usually the therapy that individuals with autism will attend. So that was my first introduction to OT. I liked behavior therapy. I liked the one-on-one time that you get with the clients. I just felt like something was missing. There was some sort of element of it that I didn't like, and I needed to find in another profession, and that's really what drew me to OT.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. Caitlin, before you ask your question, follow up on that. You were mentioning that you started working when, what, you were 16 with the population that you work with right now. What job was that? What did that look like for you?
So when I was 16, I was a full-time support staff every summer for teenagers and young adults with intellectual disabilities. We would teach them to use the bus, teach them how to handle money, and we would go throughout the community just doing fun stuff, movies, bowling, stuff like that. Really just reinforcing that money handling, that bus riding, and helping them to gain more independence and confidence in the community.
I was muted, sorry. I was saying, cool. Not a lot of 16-year-olds go to like that specific area of work or are gravitated towards that. So interesting. Okay, cool.
Very admirable. And now led you to your future career, so it's working out. But putting academics and school to the side for a second, what other interests did you explore throughout your undergrad journey, as well as like your university journey in general, that kind of helped to round out your experience?
Well, I'm a student athlete. I'll be the first to tell you that. I'm proud of that. I've been a student athlete since I was in high school, and then coming to McMaster, I was fortunate enough to make the women's hockey team here. So I've spent a lot of time on the ice, and the McMaster women's hockey team is also really well known for volunteering. So I spent a lot of time volunteering. I spent a lot of time playing hockey. And through that volunteering, I even ended up with a few part-time jobs. So I would say that I did have a very well-rounded university experience, and even now I'm on my last year on the hockey team, and I still work like 20 hours a week for BGC, which is the job I got through the hockey team. So it's very cool.
Interesting. To deviate a little bit from OT, curious about your hockey experience. How does that work? Did you try out? Did you get recruited? Like what went on with that?
So the hockey team at McMaster is a little bit different than like a standard OUA team, just because we don't have a rink on campus. We don't really have the money to fund a hockey program. So we play against a lot of ex-university players. We don't play in the university loop. So the recruiting process is also very different. I reached out when I was in grade 12 to the coach, and he just said, come out to tryouts. You have the same chance that all the other girls have. I was fortunate enough to be one of the ones that were selected in my first year trying out. And yeah, that's how it happened. The rest is history, I guess.
And then how did you work your way up? You said you're captain. Like how did that happen?
I in my first year, I was just a player. I kind of learned the ropes of how the team works, how it's run. It's very student-led. And then in my second year, I decided to take control of the volunteering opportunities. So I was the MAC Athletes Care representative for the team for a few years. That's really what got me my A in the first place, is just the fact that I was the organizer for the volunteering. Realistically, on this team, the more work you put in outside of the ice, the more you're going to get recognized by the coach and the other players. So that was actually that first year that I took over MAC Athletes Care. So in my second year, my undergrad, we ended up winning the Joyce Wignall Award, which is the award that goes to the team out of all teams at McMaster for the most volunteering. So that was awesome. Like it really felt like a huge accomplishment. It felt like, although it was a team effort, I could see like the effort that I put in all year to earn that award, which was super great. So yeah, just putting in that effort outside of the team. It doesn't matter if you're the best player on the ice, as long as you got a good attitude and you care, you're gonna be a captain.
Very cool. Okay, shifting back then to OT. So we've mentioned OT, occupational therapy, quite a bit. The question is though, what the heck is it? What is OT?
Explain, please.
Explain.
I'll be honest, I was still trying to learn this. I would say for the first 3 months of my my master's program, I still had no idea. I've chalked it down to OTs look at the things that you do on a daily basis, the things you need to do, the things you want to do. We make sure that you are able to meet all those goals that you have. So a goal for someone could be as simple as getting up to go take a shower. We're going to figure out the best course of action for that, the best modifications for that. Or for someone more in a different position, their goal might be to learn to skate. So we would look at how they would be able to accomplish that. And we look at just every part of a person. It's a very holistic approach to rehabilitation. I really like it. We always say in my house, we have a roommate who's a physiotherapist. And we always say that physiotherapists will teach you to walk, occupational therapists will teach you to dance. So we do work alongside. The PTs will really focus on that more physical aspect, where the OTs focus on everything. Social, physical, emotional, everything.
So would you say that you can work with like what kind of populations do you work with?
Any population in the world.
Okay.
That's what I really liked about OT, honestly, is that there's just so many different things that you can do with this degree. You can go work in motor vehicle accidents if you want, working on claims. You can work in a hospital, which is what I'm doing right now for my placement. You can go work with children with autism, which is how I was introduced to it. Long-term care homes have a really big use for OTs, because OTs are also specialized in like wound care or like pressure sores. It's a big thing in especially with the geriatric population. You could work anywhere. You could do home assessments, go into someone's house and determine where a grab bar might be useful, or maybe a few renovations here or there if they have the money. Teach someone how to use a walker. There's just so many things that you can do with the OT masters.
So I know you've mentioned a couple of things that led you to your interest in this program, but ultimately, what are some other factors that led you to applying to the occupational therapy master's degree?
I would say that, well, like I said, there's just so many things that you can do with a degree like this. I've never been one that likes to be tied down to a single job. I never ever wanted to be someone that would work at a desk. And I can avoid that with a career like that. But if I decide when I'm 40 years old that I want to work at a desk, I can do that with this degree as well. I would say that the biggest thing is that I've always wanted to work in a hospital. I've known that since I was a kid. I've wanted to work in a hospital. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a nurse. So I needed to figure out another way to get there and get into that, become a healthcare worker. And just through my research, I felt like occupational therapy was really the best fit for me.
Okay, very cool. Before we get to the question that we have noted down here, slight deviation again. How do I word this question? Why did you end up not choosing something like PT then? because you said that you gave that a little analogy there where PTs teach you how to walk, OTs teach you how to dance. What was it about the role of the PT that was like, that's not really for me?
Well, I really love
I was
dancing.
gonna say dancing over walking.
No, I'm kidding. I think it's pretty standard for athletes to go into kinesiology, to go into PT. I remember even being in like high school and being scouted by teams in the States. They would always say, "Oh, we have a great kin program." That was never something that I was interested in. I definitely looked at considering PT, but I didn't like that they really only take a very medical approach to everything. Everything is something's wrong with your body, they're gonna fix it. It's not a super holistic approach. I find that, they're not as well versed when it comes to cognitive impairments or just mental health, which someone with an OT is also certified to work in. I just wanted to be able to work with a patient in a more holistic approach than I felt like PT would give. And I really find it quite interesting when you're just comparing the different models. Like you look at there's the medical model, which is pretty standardized in Western culture, I would say. It's very much that the illness is within the person and we can get rid of it. Whereas a more holistic approach or a more OT approach is like we're not going to tell you that the illness is a problem unless you decide the illness is a problem. It's a completely person-centered approach, and I like that we're able to give a lot of autonomy to the patients.
Okay. Now, to follow up on that, is that just the nature of the way that the MAC program is structured in teaching OT? Or outside of it, is it common, or what's the word? What am I trying to say? Like, yeah, let me backtrack a sec. Is the nature of the program or the education that you described specific to McMaster, or do other schools take a little bit more of that medicalization approach to teaching OT?
It's pretty standard across the profession of OT. It's a very holistic approach to rehab, like I've said at least 3 times. That I would say that is probably the best way to describe OT. And all people in Ontario are certified by the College of Occupational Therapists in Ontario, and the college states that it is a holistic approach and it's person-centered practices for sure.
Okay, cool. Then to follow up on that, then can you talk a little bit more about the way the OT program is structured at MAC? So the courses, the placements, PBL, PV, whatever the thing is called, or PBT.
Yeah. So MAC, from my understanding, takes quite a different approach than other occupational therapy schools, especially in Ontario. There's a lot of emphasis on learning by yourself, doing your own research. I would say it takes a certain kind of person to enjoy that type of learning. I haven't quite decided whether I'm that type of person yet or not, but the way that the program is arranged is we have 2 months of courses, then we have our first placement, then we go on Christmas break. Then we come back and we have another 2 months of courses. We have 2 months of placement, 2 months of courses, and we go back. Then we go on a short little summer break, which is super nice. I'm so lucky that I get one of those. And then in our second year, it's more like 4 months of courses, 2 months of placement, 4 months of courses, and then you finish off with your final 2 months of placement. Each placement, you're expected to become more independent, less reliant on your preceptor. I think in the 4th placement, you are actually expected to take on your own caseload. So that's kind of just preparing you for the profession. And I'll be honest, in my first placement, I felt like I didn't really know anything. And I came out of that feeling like I could enter a career into that right now and be prepared to do it. You learn so much on placement. It's amazing. I'll speak to PBT because that is definitely another thing that McMaster does a little bit differently than other schools. You're in a group of probably 5 or 6 different students. You have case studies. You basically do your own research. You decide who's researching what, and you solve the case study. You meet, right now we're meeting twice a week for 2.5 hours. So it's a lot of time that you're spent doing that case study and just talking about it. But believe me, you need that time if you're doing your research correctly. It was a learning curve, I would say, but again, for some people, this is definitely their type of learning style. For some people, it's definitely not. So you just got to know yourself, I would say, especially if people are considering different OT schools. You got to know what type of learning you enjoy, for sure.
So you've said that Mac is like more focused on PBT as opposed to like other schools. Was there a difference in the process of applying to McMaster versus other schools, or like what did that application process in Ontario look like for different occupational therapy programs?
So, I applied to U of T, Western, Queens, and McMaster. Western, Queens, and U of T were all the same. It was submit your CV, answer. I think I had 2 supplementary questions. Western was the only school that required you to write the Casper. McMaster didn't need any of that. McMaster strictly looked at your grades, and then through that grading process, they had a cutoff, and they offered up interviews. I think in my year, 250 people got an interview, 69 people, 68 people got in. I think this year they've done it quite differently, where instead of face-to-face interviews like we're used to, the applicants just record themselves answering a question. So I think that because of that process, they were able to hand out a lot more interviews, which honestly I like, because the difference between someone who got an 80 average in their undergrad versus someone who got a 95 average in their undergrad, it was huge when I applied. But now that they're handing out more interviews, someone with an 80 average might get an interview, and honestly, they might be a better OT. Grades don't make the OT, you know? It's really about a whole bunch of other traits, and I'm hoping that this different interview processes changes things up, and we'll get some better equipped OTs in the future.
Gotcha. With the more interviews being handed out with this process that they're now implementing, does that translate to more spots being available, or just more interviews?
I think it's just more interviews. It's making the cutoff for grades lower because they're able to hand out more. Because I think that they've realized that truly, honestly, in my experience, the person that gets 99, 98% average might not be the best OT in the world. I'm not saying that there aren't great smart OTs out there that are really book smart, but I'm saying that to not give someone who gets an 85% average a chance is a little wild to me, because I think that there are some super capable, super awesome OTs out there that just unfortunately didn't get a chance.
It diversifies the applicant pool, essentially.
Exactly,
Okay.
for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. Next question. What is your ultimate goal with OT? Whether that be a specific specialty within it, working with a specific population. I think you were mentioning that you're interested with kids and intellectual disabilities. So what is your ultimate goal?
So this is going to surprise probably everyone. Coming into this, I probably thought intellectual disabilities, But after my first placement, it was amazing. I realized that I probably want to actually work with geriatric patients, specifically patients with dementia, I think. I fell in love with my first placement. It was on a behavioral health unit, so everyone there had some sort of acquired brain injury or a lot of dementia patients. But the reason that they were there instead of in a nursing home or a long-term care home was because that they had very outright behaviors towards others or to themselves. That could be physical or verbal. And I think honestly, my experience working with, the populations that I've worked with in the past has prepared me for this, so I don't regret those at all. It's just wild that I'm completely changing from kids to geriatrics, but I think that's probably the population that I'm going to be working with in the future. I've just fallen in love with it.
And what kind of skills did you think you learned while that's another word, while working with kids that you can kind of adapt and apply to the population you want to work with? Like, how did those experiences adequately build up your skills to the place where in your placement you were so confident in your abilities by the end?
I think that's a really good question. One that I love to give my answer here, because I think that there are a lot of people out there that could probably learn from my experiences. When you work with kids, I find that people are more forgiving. A kid has a tantrum, you chalk it down to the fact that they're a kid. When you see an adult, they have a tantrum, it changes your perspective on that person. Maybe that's getting along with a difficult friend. Maybe it's having to deal with a difficult teacher. I've taken a different stance where I don't look at the person and think, wow, that person's horrible. I think, I wonder what that person's been through. Yes, you have to hold people accountable for their behaviors, but at the same time, sometimes you got to realize that a behavior is just an outward expression of something else, a feeling, an emotion. And I think that's really changed my perspective, especially working with patients. Right now, I'm working on just like a medicine unit. So these are individuals that have been admitted to the hospital, and there were a lot of people in pain. And, we'll go up to them and be like, hey, you got to stand up. We got to get you moving. We don't want you to develop any pressure sores or anything like that. And we'll get yelled at. And I would say 7 years ago, if I had been yelled at like that, I would have gone home crying. But now I chalk it down to the fact that this poor person is just in so much pain. They don't know how else to express it. And I have to honestly thank the kids for teaching me how to handle these emotions, for sure.
Very cool. From hearing what you said, it sounds like it's a lot of just, I don't know, like, not to say, obviously, like, you sound like a very empathetic person, but maybe just the way that you navigate empathy has developed as you've gotten older. I don't know, and your ability to, like, see people, I don't know, beyond their actions, but more through, like, their intentions has changed. And maybe it sounds like it's informed, I guess, the interests that you've developed and the way that you operate as a future healthcare professional. So it's very cool. I was curious, from what you've worked in so far and what you've seen with like the geriatric population and individuals living with dementia, how does your role as an OT differ depending on like what stage of dementia the individual's living with?
So that's a fun question to answer. So on the unit that I was working on, it was pretty severe cases of dementia. A lot of them were usually end stage dementia. So we didn't have, you hear those stories about dementia where the people they kind of bounce in and out of delusions. One day they'll be the same old self that you remember, and then the next day they'll forget everything. I didn't experience that when I was working because everyone was suffering, unfortunately, from this disease constantly. But you take different approaches to everyone. There was one individual that I remember that used to be a police officer, and his persona became a police officer again when he was on this unit. He would guard his room. He wouldn't let anyone in there. So my approach to speaking with him would be a little bit different than my approach to speaking to, let's say, a female who was a preschool teacher. You just gotta adapt, and I don't think that's specific to patients with dementia. That's specific to anyone. You gotta figure out what makes them tick and really be able to build that rapport with them.
Great answer. Thank you.
Okay, so putting occupational therapy aside for a second, who are you outside of school, outside of your program? Let us in. Who are you?
I am someone who likes to have a lot of fun. I always say that I run this house like a summer camp.
There's always being our student house.
Yeah. There's always
university students.
Activities going on, arts and crafts. I love to plan an event. I love just making people happy, having fun with my friends. I would say for me, if we were looking at my occupations and what is most meaningful to me, it's definitely spending time with the people I care about. So I would say that's who I am outside of school. I'm the person that wants to be with their friends, for sure.
And the camp counselor.
And the camp counselor. And the student athlete. Don't forget about that.
Of course, it's everything together. Out of curiosity, how did you guys meet? When did you become, what was the process of when you guys actually became friends?
Good question.
So Caitlyn and I went to high school together. We were in separate, at that time it was called squads. We were in separate squads.
Yes.
We were in grade 9, and then grade 10 I merged into her squad. But our squad was quite big. I would say 10, 11, 12 people.
Yeah.
So our
it was
paths,
like 2 squads combined.
Yeah, our paths didn't truly cross, I would say, until late grade 11, grade 12. We just became instant best friends. It sucks that it took so long for us to just sit down and have a conversation with each other, but once we did, it was an instant connection for sure.
We used to not hang out if it was just us two.
That's true.
In grade 10, we wouldn't hang out.
That's funny.
Be like, who's coming? Oh, Caitlyn? Just Caitlyn?
Okay, plans are canceled.
I can't come. Now we don't want anyone else to join us.
Whoa.
That's funny. So, but you guys have known each other then 9 years, or 8 or 9 years, technically.
Yeah, are we that old?
I guess so.
If it was grade 9 that you knew of each other, then it's like,
that's a long time.
Damn, almost a decade. Wow. And going strong. Good for you guys. Alrighty. Yeah, fist bump. There you go. Very last question to wrap up this interview. Megan, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I want to be working in a hospital for sure. I want to be loving my job. I want to be loving every second of it. I want to wake up in the morning and be excited to go to work. I want to end the day and be sad that I have to leave work. My dad always says, I'm sure he stole this quote from someone else as well. Find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. So that's what I want. 10 years, I don't know, maybe 33. Woo. 33 in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Happy early birthday.
What
day is your birthday, out of curiosity?
March 24th.
Okay. One of my friend's birthdays in about 2 weeks, and so I was gonna say maybe it's the same day. No, her birthday's the 25th, so almost there.
Almost. I think I want to have a family probably, but at this point in my life, the most important thing to me is just to be happy. And if that doesn't include a family, then that's fine by me. I just want to be happy.
Again, live, laugh, love. Okay, well, with that final question, Megan, that wraps up this interview. You were a trooper. Hopefully you didn't hear the music the entire time that we were talking, but if not, a little background on
She
you.
was dancing the whole time. She's an occupational therapist.
There you go. See, you know what? You're welcome. It makes sense that it was there. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us for this interview. Oh, also thank you to Caitlyn for being a lovely guest host.
Thank you for
that
having
wraps
me.
it up. No problem. And we will see everyone next time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yes.